Amnesty report. I have a viewer question here from Arvid who asks about, what about Turkey in Syria and possibly in Gaza? What do you think about that? Is Turkey a wild card, Jonathan?
I thank the gentleman for his question. No, I don't think Turkey is a wild card. Turkey is a potential enemy of Israel. It's just one short bit away from becoming a real enemy, an outspoken and officially designated enemy. In my perspective, Turkey is on a war footing. They have imperialistic, expansionist designs and desires over the region. Many parts of the current Turkish leadership dream of reinstituting the Ottoman Empire in this area of the world. And if you listen to, read between the lines, but also listen to speeches made in Turkish, you'll hear that, we used to govern this for 400 years. It was part of our land. It was part of the caliphate, and it should be so in the future again. And we're going to make it part of the Turkish Empire again. This isn't things that I'm making up. And when you couple that kind of mindset with Turkey being an outspoken supporter of the Muslim Brotherhood, with Turkey being a facilitator for Hamas and other terror organizations, financial facilitator and military facilitator for Hamas, and with Turkey's extreme hostility, diplomatic hostility towards Israel, which is evident in every fora and every front. When you couple all of those things together with Turkish economic capabilities and most importantly their current military capabilities, you get a very dangerous cocktail, a cocktail that is combustible. And my assessment, when we look a few years into the future, sadly, I can definitely see a situation where there's a military confrontation between Israel and Turkey, designed by Turkey, instigated by Turkey, in order to have an excuse and in part of a Turkish expansionist attempt to take control over the region. So Turkey is hostile, negative, supports terror organizations, supports the Muslim Brotherhood, facilitates a lot of very negative things towards Europe, but specifically in my area of the world, towards Israel. And I can only regret that the Turkish government regime is cozy and on good terms with the American administration. I think that's a very significant mistake by the American administration, and I only wish that they would reconsider, recalibrate, and understand that the Turkey under Erdogan is not a positive force.
Right. Report as of late, recently, Amnesty published this here report called "Targeting Civilians, Murder, Hostage Taking, and Other Violations by Palestinian Armed Groups in Israel and Gaza." And Amnesty has been criticized by this, also by me and a lot of other people, for not publishing this report. I had on Dr. Yariv Muhar, who was high up in the system of the Israel chapter of Amnesty, talking about how their office was in effect closed down by Amnesty head office because they refused to parrot these genocide libels of towards Israel. So they were closed down, and also he was criticizing how they've been sitting on this report ever since October 7th and not wanting to publish it because it could actually tilt the narrative in favor of Israel or create more understanding for Israel. And as we all know, Amnesty actually published a report on Gaza, calling it a genocide, concluding on genocide even before the international criminal courts and everything, just around a year after October 7th. And then this comes out 26 months after October 7th. So, Jonathan, what are your thoughts about this whole report from Amnesty International?
Yeah, it's, the levels of cynicism, they are just, through the roof. Amnesty is an organization that claims to be impartial and to fight for human rights worldwide. It's based in Britain, has a budget of, I think, around 320 million pounds. has offices worldwide, and still, sadly, enjoys international standing and legitimacy as a non-governmental so-called humanitarian organization. I believe it is corrupt. I believe it serves, in my part of the world, it serves a Palestinian anti-Israeli agenda. There are statements by the head of Amnesty USA and other seniors in Amnesty, documented online, and viewers can look it up with very easy searches, where senior people at Amnesty have even been quoted saying that they have issue and they oppose to the fact that Israel is a Jewish state. It goes as deep as that. I think his name is O'Brien, that's senior.
Yeah.
And Amnesty is an organization that for many years has been part of a very well-coordinated network of so-called humanitarian organizations that are campaigning against Israel, that are operating in a coordinated way using buzzwords and humanitarian talk in order to delegitimize Israel, in order to undermine Israel's standing, international standing, legal standing, in order to expose and soldiers to judicial warfare, lawfare against them, and basically in order to prevent Israel from having the ability to protect itself and eventually to exist. And I'm not going, this isn't an exaggeration. That is the scope of what Amnesty is part of doing. And they've issued, the first report that Amnesty issued regards to Gaza, when they mentioned genocide, was in December 23. December 23, they issued reports, I just checked it out on their website, speaking about genocide. And part of that, even before proceedings were initiated by South Africa against Israel, South Africa, by the way, paid for by Iran and with a lot of backdoor incentives from Iran to South Africa so that South Africa would make that allegation against Israel. But even before that, Amnesty was part of that network that created, again, their international standing, used their international standing against Israel. So it's an organization that has a track record of, proven bias against Israel, systemic institutional bias against Israel. And the fact that, as you say so correctly, it took them 26 months to issue a conclusive report, which is based on not a lot of primary sources, but they did some interviews and looked at videos, etc. And at least they're able to say that, oh yes, Hamas killed mostly civilians on October 7. That was their intent, and Hamas abducted the civilians, and they conducted war crimes and crimes against humanity, and that they even did torture and abuse and many other things. News to exactly no one, and about 2 years too late, of course, when all of this was, public knowledge and clearly available before, and a drop in the ocean and totally at an irrelevant time. I think it's more of a fig leaf, an attempt by Amnesty to say that, look, this is a report that we published and it says, critical things of Hamas. But as you say very correctly, Leif, timing matters. And if this report had come a month after October 7, then it would have been relevant to the discussion. When it comes 2 years, almost 2.5 years after, it isn't really relevant. And it's, of course, part of the whole very cynical political process. I went through the report, not very interesting. Some of it was, a little bit graphic, and they say themselves in the beginning that they struggled to have cooperation with Israelis. They didn't say why, but I can give you my assessment of why, because nobody trusts them. Nobody believes in Amnesty in Israel. Nobody thinks that giving them testimony will be reflected in a fair and unbalanced and an impartial way in the reports. And Israelis have seen how horrible how hypocritical Amnesty has been over the years, and specifically since October the 7th, and therefore not a lot of people wanted to cooperate with Amnesty. Last thing, I think that when I look at the introduction there, they write, first paragraph is bottom line about what Hamas, and then second paragraph, of course, how could they not? They speak about Israeli violations and they speak about Israeli genocide. They say Israeli genocide and apartheid, two slogans and buzzwords that are part of the Palestinian legal lawfare against Israel, two words that have been hijacked, gutted of their original meaning, and weaponized against Israel in a very untruthful way. And genocide is something that, it's a call sign, it's a dog whistle, it's a slogan that the entire pro-Hamas, anti-Israeli camp is using it falsely, when in fact the only genocidal intent in this conflict has been of Hamas against Israel. Israel has no genocidal intent, and Israel has not taken genocidal actions against Palestinians. Israel has fought a war against Hamas, and has fought so with one hand, at least one hand, tied behind his back, and with an attempt, perhaps not always purpose, but with an attempt to fight according to international humanitarian law, which is very far from anything you could say about Hamas. So, to summarize, too little, too late, a fig leaf which is transparent, and it really shines through, and it's really clear what Amnesty is about. It is a tool, an international NGO that still sadly has some international standing, that is part of lawfare and legitimacy fighting against Israel. And I think that their reporting is irrelevant, untruthful, and biased.
Analysis of attack patterns, communications between fighters during the assaults, and public statements by Hamas and other armed factions. All of it forms the basis of Amnesty's new report. The human rights group says Hamas and its allies committed crimes against humanity during the October 7th attack, after previously limiting its terminology to war crimes. The alleged crimes include murder, extermination, imprisonment, torture, rape and other form of sexual violence and inhumane acts.
Amnesty International found that these crimes were committed as part of a widespread and systematic attack against a civilian population. The report found that fighters were instructed to carry out attacks targeting civilians.
Within hours of publication, Hamas forcefully rejected the findings. Israel, meanwhile, says Amnesty's conclusions are not only overdue, but incomplete.
It took Amnesty International more than 2 years to address Hamas's heinous crimes, and even now its report falls far short of reflecting the full scope of Hamas's horrific atrocities.
On October 7, 2023, Hamas and allied groups launched an unprecedented assault on Israel, killing more than 1,200 people, most of them civilians.